You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining this meeting of the Audit, Compliance, and Risk Committee of the Board of Trustees and the Research Foundation Board of Directors. As we proceed with our agenda, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. I will now call the roll of the committee. Jim Rogers here. John Chilton. Here. Al Cornish.
Here.
Thank you. Having determined a quorum is present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you to Gary Stewart, our audit advisor, for also joining us today.
Yes, I'm here.
First item of business is the approval of minutes from October 28th, 2020. May I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Our next item of business is an update from Chris Suda of Clifton Larson Allen regarding the external audit plan. Chris, would you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. And Jake or someone else, can you just confirm that you can hear and see me clearly? Can someone please confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much. So Jake, let's go ahead. We have a PowerPoint presentation. Let's just go ahead and start out on slide 1. I just want to say good afternoon and thank you for inviting CLA today to present the results of the fiscal year 2020 independent external audit of the single audit for the University of Louisville and to provide our plan for the fiscal year 2021 audit. For those of you who are unfamiliar with me, my name is Chris Suda, as mentioned, and I am the signing engagement principal with CLA. With me today is Kyla Greenhoe, your returning manager, as well as Ethan Lay, your returning engagement senior in charge. So let's please move on to slide 2, Jake. So the agenda. So again, today we want to cover the results of the fiscal year 2020 single audit, as the issuance of the reports were delayed due to the delay of the compliance supplement requirements issued by the United States Office of Management and Budget for the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, or what we refer to as HERF. We also want to cover our audit plan and scope of the fiscal year 2021 audit, as well as some unique items for 2021 and some cover some audit success factors, for the university as well as CLA in this audit process. So let's please move to slide 3. So let's go ahead and close out and cover the final results of the fiscal year 2020 audit. Our financial report, originally, dated October 20th, 2020, did not identify any material weaknesses, and this was communicated earlier at the October committee meeting, the October 2020 committee meeting. Our report on compliance over major federal programs was signed and issued on April 5th, due to delay previously mentioned. Our opinion on compliance is a clean, unmodified opinion, and that is exactly what the committee should expect to see here today. We did identify one finding considered to be a significant deficiency related to reporting the correct student enrollment effective date to the National Student Loan Data System. There were no disagreements with the university officials, and the university has already implemented a corrective action plan. So I think we're covered there. We should see that resolved. Please move to slide 4. So let's cover the single audit major programs. The 2 federal single audit major programs for fiscal year 2020 was the Student Financial Aid Cluster and the new CARES Act Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, or HERF. For the Student Financial Aid Cluster, we tested, compliance requirements around allowable activities, cash management, eligibility, matching, reporting, and special provisions. And then for the HERF, the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, we did not identify any deficiencies to communicate. We tested compliance requirements over allowable costs, earmarking, period of performance, procurement, and reporting. So quite a bit of testing going on there, but overall, really good results. Please move to slide 5. So let's look at the status of the fiscal year 2019 findings. There's always a follow-up to the findings of the previous audit. So there were no repeat findings to communicate from the fiscal year 2019 audits. That's really great results. As you can see from this slide, all 4 prior year findings, a corrective action plan was implemented and the finding resolved. Let's go ahead and move to slide 6. So let's cover the fiscal year 2021 engagement scope and deliverables. So the audit scope and deliverables, we summarized it on this slide, and this is based on discussions with management and has not changed from the prior year. So again, we will be providing opinions on the financial statements for the university, the research foundation, and the athletic association. We will be providing an opinion on the university's compliance with each federal major programs and report on internal controls. Separately, we will be issuing our accountant's report on the NCAA agreed upon procedures, compliance with House Bill 622, and our report on lease law compliance. So let's go ahead and move to slide 7. So on slide 7, let's just, cover the engagement team. So on this slide, we have presented the university's, engagement team, CLA engagement team, which consists of highly trained industry professionals from CLA's higher education and, the healthcare industry practices, as well as, information technology specialist. Contact information has been, provided here on this slide for your use. Let's go ahead and move to slide 8. So in this slide, we cover the responsibilities of all parties involved. So governance, management, the auditors, which includes, our responsibility, CLA's responsibility as the independent external audit, which is to provide an opinion on the financial statements as whether they're fairly presented. So let's please move to slide 9. Audit methodology. So our financial statement audit methodology is divided into a 4-phase approach. I just want to communicate that we're currently mostly through phase 2, which includes testing and evaluation of the system of internal controls. That's significantly complete. But we'll constantly be revisiting our risk assessment and continuous communication of those results. So let's please move to slide 10. So our risk assessment, our initial risk assessment has been completed. However, we, as I just mentioned, we're constantly revisiting our risk assessment throughout the entire course of the audit, adjusting for any known changes. Our assessment is based, on prior knowledge, working with the university, factors, impacting the institution, which we're going to kind of cover some of that in a minute, and interviews with management as well as governance, and then changes in compliance and other inherent, known risk. So let's please move to slide 11. Just a reminder, governance has engaged CLA to perform an independent external audit, and your input is, highly valued in this audit process. We do interview governance, and out of that, we will include any risk factors that come out of those interviews. So let's please move to slide 12. So now let's go ahead and quickly cover some unique audit items for 2021, including the continued impact of the pandemic and an update on government reporting standards. So let's go ahead and move to slide 13. So the COVID pandemic, has had a considerable impact on the higher education industry, and we will continue to see its effects throughout the remainder of the year and into the foreseeable future. Enrollment trends continue to be an area of concern for 4-year institutions, with the possibility of tuition-free colleges on the horizon. Online versus in-person classes, it does appear currently that students are pulling in favor of back in, the classrooms. Institutions are also beginning to see the long-term effects, of the local economy and unemployment. The federal government has provided institutions with considerable funding through the relief programs to provide aid to students, and as well as some institutional support. So far there have been 3 separate higher education emergency relief funds, which includes the Education Stabilization Fund, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, and the American Rescue Plan. These relief dollars also present, clearly some additional strains and challenges for the institutions, the university. There are, considerable compliance requirements associated with the use of these funds. All these inputs continue to have an impact on the overall audit approach and the audit process. In the past year, the audit process has gone almost entirely virtual, and we have made significant investment in the technology to do so successfully. However, with the release of the vaccine, we are moving towards a more hybrid approach. We have worked with the university and their staff to identify what works best for them. We will be back on site. When it's practical and easier to perform the audit remote, we'll be doing that. So let's go ahead and move to slide 14. So just on this slide, we just recap the areas of operations, audit and accounting, and compliance being impacted by the continued effects of the pandemic. So let's go ahead and move to slide 15. Single audit for fiscal year 2021. The objective of the single audit is a report on internal controls over compliance with the federal major programs and provide an opinion on compliance. Our preliminary assessment of the federal major programs, we have identified research and development cluster and the CARES HERF funds as federal major programs. That may change, but right now that's where we're at. So let's move to slide 16. Our single audit methodology, this is a 3-phase approach. We're currently in phase 2, which includes testing and evaluation of internal controls over compliance over the federal major programs. Let's go ahead and move to slide 17 and cover the timeline. On this slide, we've outlined the current targeted timeline with the financial statement reports being, released, issued on October 2nd of 2021. Similar to the prior year, the single audit timeline and the release of the reports, this is going to be dependent upon the release of the U.S. Office Management Budget's release of the 2021 compliance supplement. It has been communicated through the Government Audit Quality Center, which is the liaison between CPAs and the OMB, that the 2021 compliance supplement will be issued in 3 separate segments at different dates. So last year, the final release was December 22nd of 2020. So, typically it's released in June, just a significant delay. The OMB has, it has not communicated the dates of these 3 separate releases. However, it is highly likely this will result in a delay of issuance of the single audit reports. Not the financial statement reports, but the single audit reports. So we are working under the assumption the timeline will be, somewhat in line with 2020. So let's please move to slide 18. Accounting standards update. So the government accounting standards impacting fiscal year 2021 includes Statement 84, fiduciary activities. The university has already provided their assessment on the impact and believe the inclusion of some dental clinic activities and the Metro College Consortium activities will be included in the university's fiscal 2021 financial statements. GASB 90 over majority equity interest. The university does not believe there would be any impact. Let's move to slide 19. Go ahead and cover some future pronouncements. So far, fiscal year 2022, we have 2 new standards, GASB 87 over leases, which converges the leasing standards into one single model. There is significant impact to the university, and the university is currently working through the implementation. And I will say they've made significant progress to date. I have, been in communications with them, and I would say they're further along than a lot of universities. So great job. GASB 89, accounting for interest costs for construction period. This is a relatively easy standard to implement. Really nothing to say there, just pretty simple. Let's go ahead and move to slide 20. So on this slide, we summarize what the university and CLA consider to be audit success factors. Most of this boils down to constant continuous communication and a proactive approach to any unique audit issues. We also address issues from the prior year's audit, to maximize the audit success for the current year. Let's go ahead and move to slide 21. So just again, I'd really like to thank the committee for inviting CLA today to present the final results of the 2020 single audit as well as our 2021 plan. We definitely appreciate your time today as well as the relationship and the interaction. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. If there are no questions, we can move on to slide 22, which just includes our contact information. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions of Chris?
I have a question for Dan, just because this presentation made me think of it. Do our current accounting systems facilitate our compliance with GASB 87? That would be a nightmare to do on spreadsheets.
Let me introduce our new controller, Beverly Santa Morris. The financial statements that you've seen in the past are actually part of Bev's, were part of Bev's responsibilities, and with the departure of the controller, Walter Newell, Bev has moved into that role. So, Bev, would you like to?
Thank you, Dan. Is this on? Okay. So our current system, PeopleSoft, does not implement that. So we have gotten an external system called Lease Query. We are to the point where I think we've identified the full population of leases. We've loaded that information in. So we can now take that information and make sure that we can get the statements and the information we need out. So we're going to have adjustments and entries that we're going to have to put into PeopleSoft, and they'll all generate from the Lease Query system.
Excellent. Thank you. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. This item was for informational purposes only and requires no action. Our next item of business is the approval of the ULRF single audit for fiscal year 2020. Sandy and Chris, would you brief the committee, please?
Chris, if you'll go ahead. I believe he's already covered the single one.
Yeah, that was
It was included.
just to confirm, that was a combined presentation of the results of the single audit as well as, our 2021 plan.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the Research Foundation?
Jim,
Yeah.
before you do that, I got a question.
Sure.
On page 56, I guess it was finding 2020-001. And when I look at the university's response in terms of what they provided, I'm not certain that the response cites any action to be taken or no action. In fact, it appears to be the university questioning them in terms of what they've said.
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing that.
Okay.
This is the enrollment reporting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on page 56 of the board book, there is a finding from 2020-001, which is a significant deficiency, but less than material. And when I read the university response to what the external auditor has presented, it seems to me that there is no response and no action. In fact, it's questioning what the external auditors have said.
Chris, I'll take that one.
Okay.
So we did have some question on, is this, I can't tell if this is on or not. There was some question because there was some conflicting guidance. So the findings in question had to do with student drop dates and reporting those drop dates to the student loan financing system. So then that system would know then that these students need to start paying on their loans. We had some conflicting guidance on what the date, what's the timeline of how many days we had to do that. So the only change we made is we are now using the shorter time period instead of the longer time period.
Can you, when I remember looking at this too, and it seems like it could have some potential implications to the student.
I guess the only implications to the student would be when they have to start processing the loan, but we're really talking about days here, not weeks or months or anything. So our findings were days of difference. Maybe we should have reported it on the 10th and it happened on the 11th or 12th. So it wasn't really enough to make any type of impact to the students.
Okay, that was not clear to me when I read it.
Well, I guess as I read it, it was in fact what date you were reporting for student withdrawal.
Right,
Which
right.
in fact is a trigger for a lot of other actions. So, for us, it may be a matter of days. For students, it's more important than just a matter of days.
So the finding is.
And then again, the response is, it didn't say we corrected it or we did it. If you read the response, it's like we're taking issue with it.
So we did say that, we had guidance that had, a couple different dates in there, but our response is that we're going to take the shorter date. So we know that we meet that compliance. And this really only has to do with the student loan reporting system. So I know there are other implications on the date used for a student's withdrawal, but this was specifically for that instance.
Yeah, that is correct. There are no question costs here involved. So it really is just a reporting, a compliance finding around reporting, which is required. I mean, it's a requirement, but nonetheless, there's no question cost.
I just don't see in this where it says, and from this point forward, we're going to do X.
So this will be addressed in this current year's audit also, because CLA will have to go back and retest what they found last year, and we can address it clearly in that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to let you know, the corrective action plan isn't presented in here. That is provided via the data collection form, which is uploaded, and it's not part of this package. But if anyone wants to see the corrective action plan, we could definitely make that available, or the university can easily make it available.
John, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions if I could. One is relates to the scope of the audit. Is the scope of the audit for this upcoming audit the same as the previous year?
It is, yeah. It's almost identical, but do realize, the federal major programs typically, we don't audit the same programs every year. It's based on a risk assessment, rotational basis. So in 2020, we audited student financial aid as well as the HERF funds. Well, this year we're going to be, rotating into the research and development cluster, which again is significant federal dollars, as well as the higher education emergency relief funds, just because the Department of Education has communicated to the OMB that, the HERF funds are going to be deemed high risk, so we have to audit them.
On page 12 in our board book, it talks about a report on lease law compliance. Is that new this year?
No, yeah, that's a real simple one-page report, just on compliance with the lease laws of the state. So it's straightforward. That's just that's really small.
Everything on this slide is the same scope.
That is correct. It is the exact same scope as prior years.
Second question would be about the continuity of your audit team with last year and previous years.
Yeah, so from a leadership perspective, the continuity, we like to keep that continuity because of the familiarity. It makes the audit process really strong and successful. We're always rotating associate, staff level people through, doing some of the detailed testing. It's always good to get fresh eyes on, the real detailed testing. They might identify something different from year to year, but no, the team is, from a leadership perspective, it's the same team.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We have a motion to approve the Research Foundation's fiscal year 20 single audit report as presented.
I'll move.
Second. Al, can you second?
Mr. Cornish, would you like to second the motion?
Yeah.
Maybe on mute.
I was seconding it and had my mute on. I second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Next on our agenda today is the approval of a revised university intimate relations policy. Lori, will you brief us?
Sure, thank you. In 2019, Beth Boehm, serving as provost, asked a committee to look at this policy, which hadn't been updated since 1999. The charge of the committee was to make sure the policy was student-centered and that the product from the committee work would be a revised policy statement that you see now. In the 1999 policy, there was no true prohibition on a sexual relationship between faculty and students. It only cautioned them to, it didn't prohibit it, just cautioned against them. So the new policy has made sure that we didn't overlap with other policies that are already in place, like nepotism or sexual harassment policies. And the new policy, in fact, has some prohibitions written in them. So an instructor, staff, or administrator, relationships between those folks and an undergraduate student are prohibited. Anyone that has a supervisory role over students, and that could be a graduate students, that might be grading students or teaching a class, those relationships are prohibited. And then any supervisor and supervisee, anyone that has a direct report, those relationships are prohibited. And so the policy requires someone to self-report if such a relationship is formed. And if anyone is aware of such a relationship, they also are urged to report it. And then there's a statement in the policy that you can ask for an exemption in case something, we may even have, when this policy goes in place, current relationships that aren't supervisory, but there's a way to request an exemption. I just want to say the reason this is important is because when you have any sort of hierarchical supervisory role over students, our students, and particularly our undergraduate students, can be vulnerable. So this has tightened the policy and I think made it very student-centered.
Thank you, Lori. Any questions of Lori?
Actually, I did. So, so my only question looking at the definitions was in regard, I know that, we have a number of students who also qualify as staff. And under the staff definition, it talks about full-time students enrolled in the university who are also staff, that, that's a different thing. But I don't see anything in regard to part-time students who also hold staff positions, which I would assume there are. And so I was wondering where that falls into our definitions here.
I would say it comes in under staff or under staff having a supervisory responsibility, or a faculty member having the supervisory responsibility for the student. Gotcha. So you might have two definitions, but whatever definition, if you're in the class, you're a student. If you're in a relationship with a direct report with your supervisor, you're a staff member.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I had a question. What are the consequences of violation of policy?
Well, the consequences of a violation of the policy would be, it would be a violation of the code of conduct, which could end up with a sanction. And then another policy we're going to be bringing to you maybe by the next board meeting is a faculty accountability policy that says you are accountable to follow the rules of the university. And so in that policy for faculty particularly, there's the possibility of a remediation or some kind of consequence to that kind of behavior. I'm seeing if Mary Elizabeth is shaking her head yes, so that's good. I did it.
Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve the university's intimate relations policy as presented?
So move.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is the approval of the fiscal year 2021 audit services plan. Sandy, would you please brief the committee?
Sure. Well, first, I'd just like to say thank you to all the faculty, staff, and administration who participated in our risk assessments, our audits, our investigations. We received 100% support and cooperation, and we are very appreciative of that. So, based on the audit service risk assessment and those interviews that included university leadership, deans, department heads, the use of our new auditing software, and the matrix that we put together using reports from PeopleSoft, we were able to create the 21-22 proposed audit plan that you see. The audit plan contains 8 audits. There's also a consulting project that we're currently engaged in that will carry on into 2021. And the 9th audit that you'll see there is information security, and we're very excited to have that. We engaged in an RFP process in 2020, and Dean Dorton, Allen, and Ford were the winning proposal. So in 2019, Audit Services IT auditor retired. So that's been an area in our department that we have not had the expertise to really cover. So Dean Dorton is coming in. They've been doing their risk assessment. I think they're about 85% complete with that. July 1st, they're going to start their audit. So we're extremely excited to have them at the table. Some of the items that they're going to be providing us, of course, is going to be a multi-year audit, IT audit plan, a data inventory, and then the risk assessment. So we're very excited about them. And you'll also notice in your packet that you'll see that we have accounted for an increase in investigation time. And that's because this year we did have 9 investigations. That was up a little bit from our norm, so that took quite a bit of time as well. Some, of course, were completed within a day or 2, but then some took numerous months to complete. And that's our 21-22 audit plan.
Thank you, Sandy. Are there any questions? May I have a motion to approve the audit services plan as presented?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Any opposition? Abstention? The motion carries. Our last item of business is an informational update from the Vice President of Risk Audit Compliance. Sandy, please begin.
Thanks. Yes, you also have in your packet the audit service report. I just wanted to touch on some of the highlights in the report. We were able to complete 5 audits fully with consulting projects. We have 2 audits right now where the reports are in the final stages of being complete, so we'll have a 7 in total. And I did mention we also have 2 that are in the planning project that will carry over. They're in the planning stage. We did have the 9 investigations. We received those through the hotline complaints, emails from leadership. So those had to be checked. Those had to be processed. Another highlight I think I've already touched on is how excited we are to have Dean Dorton doing the information technology audits for us. We're also participating, and I'd like to thank ITS that we're involved in the Workday project. We're serving on the steering committee. We're serving on the operation committee, the oversight committee. So we're very thankful to have some input there. And those are the highlights from the audit service report.
Thank you, Sandy. Sandy, you mentioned the investigations a few minutes ago. And I know you went back and looked historically about, not 9 was an aberration. You went back and looked at, would you comment on what it looks like the last 5 years as far as
Sure, the last 5 years. Last year we had 6. The year before there were 7. So 9 was relatively high. But we usually seem to average around 5 to 7 audits. But these, a couple of them were very time consuming.
Thank you. These items require no action.
No.
Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor? Signify aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Cornish, you may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the meeting of the Human Resources Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Al Cornish here. Mary Nixon.
Here.
Jim Rogers.
Here.
John Smith. Sherelle Zimmerman.
Here.
Thank you. Having determined a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the March 18th, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is an update from the Vice President of Human Resources, Mary Elizabeth. Would you begin?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Jake, if you don't mind helping me with the presentation deck. I will get started. I just want to share with you all, I think the last time we were together, we talked about wellness and that we had a new wellness vendor, and that's Health Advocate, and that wellness was going to be something that we were focusing on, but not just in terms of your physical health. And so we have a campaign that is not official, but unofficial in HR, in where we are really looking at intentional well-being. And so I will talk to you about some of the things that our new vendor will provide us that we didn't have in the past, but I will also be talking to you about some things that we currently have and will make sure that we talk about anytime we talk about wellness in general. So with our new vendor, the piece that we didn't have before was this advocacy. So we have the ability for our employees, in addition to having all the pieces that have to do with their physical health and the assessments that they do to determine where they may have opportunities to be healthier in a physical way, an opportunity to call experts that are a part of this health advocate group to talk about things like, I just received a bill from my physician and I don't understand why I'm being billed this amount. And they actually can work with them on that bill or their explanation of benefits to explain. And even if there are issues that need to be resolved with the doctor's office, we'll call on their behalf. In addition to that, they will talk to them about if they decide that they want to have a second opinion. They will not only talk to them about different options they may have with regards to a second opinion, but they'll make the appointment for them. So what I want to share with you is that, you know, those are pieces that are very time consuming for us when you think about the healthcare and the things that we have to do for our families, and just knowing that we have somebody that is actually an expert in the field that we can trust, that can stand in on our behalf, is huge. There isn't even really a price that we can put on just having that peace of mind and knowing that you don't have to maneuver between all of those different doctor's offices or billing agencies. So just wanted to share with you all that in addition to all the traditional things they do, they certainly can help us with those things and more. And I won't go over all of them, but just wanted to highlight a couple.
What's the name of the company again?
Health Advocate. So as I said, in addition to talking about this, and we've even partnered with Health Advocates so that they can be a partner in carrying out our intentional wellness of the whole being. So they know all about our EAP vendor. They know about all of the things that we have lined up so far this year to manage our employees' financial well-being. And so when they have folks that call them, if there are other things that come up in their conversation that relate to those pieces, they have the information to get them to the right people. So I just want you to know that for our financial well-being, we have two contracts with TIA and Fidelity, and they take care of one-on-one meetings with our employees. They do those in person, and of course, they've been doing those virtually for a little while. And they literally sit down with our employees at no cost to them and no additional cost to us other than our contractual rates with them, and talk about whatever pieces of their well-being that they want to focus on, whether that be what it looks like for retirement or if they have some short-term goals that they need to work on. So we recognized very quickly that we haven't done the best job of making sure that our employees know that we have those resources available to them. And so we are making a concerted effort to make sure that anytime we talk about wellness, we're going to be talking about all of those aspects: your emotional, your physical, your financial well-being. So Jake, please, the next slide. So I always give you all this highlight, and I love it. It's always, what are we thinking about right now? And we get that pulse, and I generally give you 3 things that the campus is thinking about. One, the idea that you all might pass our budget with a 1% salary increase is exciting to our employees. I will tell you, I don't think that it was anything that was expected as it relates to just the year that we've gone through, just knowing that there have been many challenges for all of us. So it's certainly a part of the conversation and is certainly something that has been well received. Remote work option. We've done a lot of work on this, and when I get to one of my next slides, I'll talk to you all about how we did that and just the thoughtfulness that we put into making sure that this was going to be a positive transition for our employees, but certainly it is certainly something that folks are talking about, especially since we have put out the preview of that policy and folks are having the opportunity to figure out what their new work life looks like. And finally, we were ahead of the Juneteenth holiday announcement that was made by the President of the United States, and we're all very proud of that and proud of our institution. And I will just tell you that that it's certainly something that we've heard a lot about it. And just Neely, I know that I embarrass you when I do this, but they just really appreciate the forethought because we find that many times we are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, not because the president says it's a holiday. So next slide, please. So community of care. It's funny because when the chair, Al, and I talk, he always wants me to be sure that I share with you all anything that we are doing as an institution to still care for our employees, because COVID isn't over. And so I talk about things in general, but he made sure that I made note of the things that we're still doing. So even though we're not talking about it, we still have places available on campus with our student health center where our employees and our students can go to get COVID tested if they need that testing. We still have opportunities for our employees to be vaccinated and to do that without any to do that on work time. It's certainly not a burden to them as far as time or money is concerned. And as it relates to many of the decisions that we have made, and I'll just highlight a couple of them and really talk about that return to work, just knowing that our community has been through just a lot of change. And we recognize that not just from a work standpoint, but from just being in a family and just having to live outside of these doors every day, that there are challenges that we have no idea about. In some cases we do, but most of the time we don't. That any decision that we make as a university as it relates to things that impact them and their well-being of being in a place that we want to make even better than what it is today, that COVID and just those experiences underlie the level of intentionality and the amount of grace that we put into those, and that we're very thoughtful and that we do our very best to make sure that the right people are at the table so that the voices are heard so that we land where we need to be. So that was really important for me to share with you today as it related to COVID, because I think, we're not wearing masks today, and many people have been vaccinated, but the lingering effects of COVID are still there, and we know that. So as it relates to our return to work plan, we realized that we had the policy was ready, We recognized that we had all the forms ready. We had training that we planned for supervisors that our employees asked for. But before we rolled those things out, just listening to our employees, we recognized that we needed to do this in a really thoughtful way, and that we needed to make sure that we gave lots of notice and that we did this in phases. And so I will tell you that we changed probably 3 or 4 times the order of events. And I will have to say that we landed in a really good place. And the lesson that we learned from the approach we took and how slowly we moved is that we recognized very quickly that people needed things to move a little bit slower than what we originally thought. So in May, we let everyone know this is our overarching philosophy as it relates to remote work and what that looks like as it relates to how we want to make sure our students have experiences and taking into account work-life balance. In May, we let everyone know that we were not only going to do supervisor trainings before the policy came out, we would also do trainings for our employees so that they understood what the policy was all about. And then in May, we promised that in June that the individual leaders of each unit would express, based on what our overarching philosophy and our values are as it relates to this new model of work, what that meant to those individual units. And I will tell you, all of those pieces came together. The notice went out from campus. In June, we started the supervisor and employee training before June. In June, the supervisors talked to their employees and talked to their units and let them know what that meant for them and their individual units. In June, on actually the 1st of June, we rolled out the policy. And I just want you to know all that anxiety that we had prior to that. I'm not saying there isn't anxiety today, but I will say we heard more before this process about things that people were worried about than we hear now. And so that lets me know that we did the right thing. And so I just wanted you all to know that a lot of thought and a lot of time went into thinking about what's going to work best for our team, knowing everything that we've gone through. And I think we've already talked about this, but I'll say it again. I think it's pretty exciting, and I didn't put it on my top 3, but the fact that we are not going to have our employees have any additional cost to their health insurance this year is certainly something that people are very appreciative of, as well as putting our retirement back to 7.5%. Jake, next slide, please. So just wanted to share, I think a couple of the board members have asked me just over the last months, like, what kinds of things do we do to recognize our employees? And so I won't read these to you, but I do want you to know that 2 have always existed and 1 we just added. And so the Outstanding Performance Awards and the Outstanding Supervisor Awards have been a part of our culture. But in addition to that, we've added a Cardinal Principal Champion Award. And that's part of our work with the strategic plan. How do we get this word out? How do we really make the cardinal principles come alive and be the values that underlie all the decisions we make? And so the decision was made to actually not just honor individuals, but if there are groups or there are committees, if there's a special project that's happening, so that we always have that on the forefront and remind folks that we don't just say it, we really mean it, and it's not about saying that we believe in it, it's about actually doing the work. Next slide, please, Jake. So I always leave you with these 2 projects because these are the heavy lifting projects for HR. That's our new HCM system, and I think Lori might have mentioned it or somebody did. And that's our Workday implementation, and then our compensation and total reward study. I'll start with Workday just for fun because I brought it up first. I will tell you that we have completed the discovery phase. We are now in the architect phase where we have figured out what modules make sense in our world and what are the best practices, so that, part of all of this was so that we could streamline our services and give better service to our employees and not have as much heavy lifting in the way of doing manual work. So we've taken all of that from the design stage, and they're actually building a system which will house about 500 employees in it. And at some point in the near future, they will actually be able to test the system with real employees in it to see how those modules actually work. And the folks that are the subject matter experts will actually be able to work in I can't even remember an implementation where you could actually go in and actually do the work as if it were real, so that you can get a feel for and make sure the things that we said in Architect that we wanted really do meet the needs that we have. So I will say we are, I don't have any red boxes. We have, green, yellow, and red as it relates to Workday and all the updates that we have. And happy to say that I do know that we are on budget and we are on time as of today. And last but not least, I will just tell you, with the compensation study, we have had our first meetings with our constituents that are a part of the strategic plan W3 committee. And we have also met with the steering committee, and we're beginning those first steps in determining what the actual compensation philosophy for the university is going to be. And so, we're ready. And I will tell you that people are really motivated. And so I don't think that I will ever be without an interesting update moving forward. So thank you, Jake. Any questions?
Carolyn, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On your intentional well-being.
Yes.
Our employees used to tell us, you have to tell me 3 times before I understand something.
Yes.
So, how are you going to communicate this and re-communicate it? Because you're going to get a new employee next week that didn't hear.
That's right.
So how are you going to keep this? Because this is really employee advocacy. That's really some ground level stuff.
Yes.
That most people don't do, and I don't think most people would even think of, that you're going to help me find an in-network doctor.
Okay. I'm happy.
How are you going to?
Okay, I'm happy to explain. So you're right. When our employees first come in the door and we have our orientation, our employee success center makes sure that they know coming in the door. So we do capture those folks when they first come in. As it relates to our relationship with OCM, and that's our marketing arm, we have our U of L Today news every day. And so we actually have a rotation of, you will have, in addition to anything that we have new that's coming up, we have a rotation where we give folks reminders. So when this was coming out, we actually started probably about 2 months before we actually rolled out our new vendor, and provided them with not only the information in the news, but they also got an email in their inbox individually to them. Moving forward, we have a quarterly newsletter that we send out with our benefits, and it's called Know Your Benefits. We have worked with that vendor so that they have also, so the one that's coming out actually in July has an entire section that just talks about wellness in addition to the benefits that we have for the university. We have had live, actually I think there's one happening today or happened yesterday, but we actually have live sessions with the vendor where our employees can sign up and have live interaction where they spend about 30 minutes talking about their services, and then they spend the last 30 minutes answering any questions our employees have. We added that as actually an incentive to go to their $40 incentive for next year for their monthly incentive, so that they get that discount from the healthcare premium. So I will say to you, it is embedded in all of the things that we are going to do as it relates to our normal benefits, our traditional benefits. We have our newsletter, we have live sessions, and because we want this intentional wellness, we have different live sessions. Some of them will be more focused on physical, some will be more focused on retirement. But anytime we talk about any of those different areas of wellness, we will always bake in the other pieces, which will include this one that talks about advocacy.
And you'll be able to measure how many people are taking advantage of it?
Yes. Yes, that's actually, that's part of the billing process. So we will definitely know who's using it. Yes, sir. You're welcome.
So Trustee Cornish, could I make a comment? This is Lori Gonzalez.
Please, Lori.
All right. I just wanted to make a comment about new employee orientation. I'm kind of the newest kid on the block here. And I want to tell you, I've been oriented a number of times in a number of places, and our HR Employee Success Center knocks it out of the park. When you're talking about getting someone here, understanding our values and the enthusiasm that the campus has for transformation, it's really, really remarkable and goes to wellness, because if you feel like you belong in a place that you're working and you're valued, that starts you out on the right foot. So kudos to the Employee Success Center and onboarding of our employees. So that's where they also talk about benefits. And then they follow up with an email about benefits as soon as the session is over. And then I just wanted to mention, when Mary Elizabeth was talking about staff champions, we started something this spring because of the difficulty in the past year. We just sent out the notice to students, and the subject line said, "We need your help." And we wanted to identify faculty and staff across the university that had just been extra supportive of our students. There was no requirements. You didn't have to do a nomination. You just had to send in a name. And we had 738 names sent to us, and many of those names had more than one individual. The individual mentioned more than one. So just wanted you to know, we thought a little informal recognition, a pat on the back for our faculty and staff who just were there when students needed them. So it's another kind of award to recognize what people are doing for the Cardinal community. So I just wanted to share those two pieces of information.
Thank you for sharing those. Any other questions? Thank you, Mary Elizabeth.
Thank you.
In closing, I wanted to just focus on the themes that I heard from Mary Elizabeth's presentation. The first is the holistic wellness approach that is being taken by the Human Resources Department. And the reason why it is so critical is that there have been about a half dozen studies that I've looked at, and they found that people were experiencing worse mental health problems than before the pandemic. High symptoms of stress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And up to half showed serious signs of depression. So that's why the emphasis on the holistic wellness approach, I think, is just absolutely critical. And it's going to be critical for the next few years. The second is the thoughtfulness of the Human Resources Department in the programming that they're working on and they're putting in place for the university. And finally, and I love this, they're listening to the employees and the students, and that's really important to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our employees and our students. So again, thank you, Mary Elizabeth, and your Human Resources Department.
Thank you.
Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brinkman, you may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's meeting of the Governance Committee of the Board of Trustees and Research Foundation. I will now call the roll. Scott Brinkman, here. Mary Nixon.
Here.
Diane Porter. Diane, if you are on mute, if you could unmute. Okay. Hopefully she'll join us momentarily. Jim Rogers.
Here.
David Schultz.
Here.
Thank you. Having determined a quorum present, I would like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of minutes of the April 22nd, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is the approval of university naming guidelines. Naming opportunities allow donors to link their philanthropic interests with enduring recognition for either themselves or others. Naming guidelines also provide the university with quantifiable funding opportunities to present to donors. The university developed these guidelines to support, organize, and manage the process to ensure uniformity in naming facilities and spaces on the University of Louisville campuses. And to support consistency, the university's endowment funds generate adequate annual distributions to support their designated purposes. To provide further background information, Jasmine, would you brief the committee?
Yes, thank you, Scott. Thank you very much for having me. Our goal is very simple in this new policy, and that is to build a culture of philanthropy. An easy way to define a culture of philanthropy is an opportunity for everyone to live our values by investing in our values. Advancement is here to, in part, connect donors with high-level giving opportunities across campus that meet the needs and priorities of the university, while also speaking to the donors' own experiences, their values, and their vision for the future of U of L. The naming policy that is in draft form before you equips our development staff as well as university leadership with an array of options so that we can meet donors and have opportunities to present to them. With university leadership, we are trying very hard to communicate and understand our areas of greatest need, while we also support the needs of our researchers, our faculty, and our students. This is a standard practice to have such naming guidelines, procedures, and practices across development in higher education, and this will, we believe, become a powerful tool to support the university. I'm proud of the Advancement Office for reviewing over a dozen policies utilized by our peers to develop this new draft before you. The guidelines for endowments supporting academic units, centers, and institutes based on the needs of those units include also market benchmarks and strategic priorities. Minimums you'll see in the draft for faculty positions and scholarships based on peer benchmarks also reflected conversations that we had with university leaders and professionals. Guidelines on buildings and facilities consider the construction cost of the space as well as the cost of the maintenance and operation of a space. Naming gifts should be outlined in a document that we call a charitable gift agreement, which I would like to emphasize is the beginning of the naming approval process, not the end. We want to make sure that there are lots of eyes and lots of questions on any naming document that we propose that includes a recognition of a donor. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Jasmine. May I have a motion to approve the university naming guidelines as presented?
Scott, before you do that, you said this is a draft. Are we doing some further refinements to this?
I just meant technically, Dr. Burst, before it's approved.
I only raised the issue is that our English department ought to spend a little time with this document.
I'm sorry.
What are you saying?
Our English department ought to spend some time with the document.
English. Okay.
Do you want to?
No, go ahead with it. I think it needs to just have some review.
Okay.
Provide your red line comments, Raymond. With your eagle eye. Okay.
So we will, if you approve it, what we will do is bring back or send to you with minor modifications and edits. Okay. That way you can take another look at it.
I guess in the, just on.
Jay, can you put Diane Medley's, is it on? Are you controlling? Can you?
Diane's
Medley has a
mic
question. Can you turn her mic on? Are you controlling? Oh, it's on? Okay.
Okay. In the past, I've always been curious about how this is all done. So I'm pleased with the policy. But were gifts just determined as far as naming rights at each college level? Or how was it done in the past?
I think that we had a practical flexibility that we would like to replace with a more consistent policy.
Okay. I think that answers my question.
But there has been a policy in place for many, many years. We're simply updating that policy.
Exactly.
And I will point out that the policy also requires a review of the policy every 5 years. So this will be a dynamic document going forward. Again, so.
Move to approve.
I think I need a second. I've got a, is there a motion? Did somebody make a motion?
Mary motion.
Oh, she did. And you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor signify aye. Aye. Any oppositions, abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. Now that we have university-wide guidelines for namings and designations, our next item of business is to update the Board of Trustees policy concerning the same. Our current policy has not been updated since 1998, and revised policy before you is consistent with what Jasmine and her advancement team have crafted, and we have just approved. Jasmine, do you have any information to add?
Thank you, Scott. I think we've covered most of the details. I do look forward to working with each of you and explaining or answering questions as needed. Thank you.
Are there any questions regarding our new policy? May I have a motion to approve the policy as presented?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify aye. Aye. Any oppositions, abstentions? The motion carries. Our last item of business is the approval of policy and procedures document for the university-wide committee that receives recommendations for designations and awards. Currently, the first step in the approval process is to notify the university-wide awards and designations committee, which is comprised of 2 faculty, 2 staff, and 1 student. Originally created in 1972, this committee has informally evolved over time, and its composition and scope differs greatly from its inception. Consistent with the new university naming guidelines and the revised Board of Trustees policy we just approved, this recommendation formalizes a document describing the procedures and guidelines of the university-wide committee, henceforth to be called the University Advisory Committee on Designations and Awards. Signifying the university's commitment to shared governance, the new composition of the UACDA will be 2 faculty, 2 staff, 2 students, and the vice president for advancement. The committee will provide advice to the president and board regarding matters relating to naming university property or instituting university-wide awards. This recommendation was endorsed by our faculty, staff, and student representatives on the board. Are there any questions? May I have a motion to approve the document as described?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right, Mary made the motion, Jim seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify aye. Aye. Any oppositions? Abstentions? The motion carries. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify aye. Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Dr. Rice, you maybe.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll of the committee. Raymond Burse here, Sabrina Collins, Diane Porter.
Here.
Okay. David Schultz.
Here.
Cheryl Zimmerman.
Here.
Having determined a quorum is present, I would like to call this meeting to order. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes of the March 18, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries and the minutes stand approved. Our next item of business is approval of revised bylaws for the School of Nursing. Provost Gonzalez, would you brief the committee?
Sure. The nursing bylaws, they made changes in the voting on any kind of matter coming before the faculty organization. Any full-time faculty member can now vote. That wasn't the case in the past. They also decreased the number of tenured members needed to be on committees, so they weren't tapping the same people to be on more and more committees. They also added academic affairs committees for all their degree programs so that they could focus on the specific curricula. That's for their BSN, their RN to BSN, their master's entry for professional nursing, which is a second degree program, DNP and PhD. And then they added a number of smaller committees that would have a focus on community engagement. Those were the main highlights of the changes.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the revised School of Nursing bylaws as presented?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that those bylaws be approved. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. Our next item of business is approval of revised bylaws for the Speed School of Engineering.
So in the Speed School, they also added a clause that all full-time faculty who've been there for at least 2 years could vote. They also added a way for faculty members to place something on the agenda for the faculty meetings that was not there before. In their bylaws, they had listed all the academic programs, but that shows up in the catalog, so they removed that redundancy. They updated their list of standing committees and changed the voting requirements. And they revised the procedure for amendments to be consistent with adding agenda items to faculty meetings. And they defined the voting procedures in a new article and updated the appendices.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the revised Speed School bylaws as presented? Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the revised Speed School bylaws be approved as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion carries. Our next items of business are a consideration to approve 4 new academic programs. Dr. Gonzalez, I ask that you brief us on all 4 recommendations, and then we will consider them separately once you finish.
Thank you. So we have 4 new certificate programs for you to consider. The first is a 9-credit certificate in the College of Business, and the certificate is in Family Business Management and Advising. And the program is designed to provide students with the knowledge and skills that will help them understand, manage, and navigate the intricacies of family businesses and provide the tools to advise these types of organizations. Students that complete this certificate can apply it to the College of Business MBA degree program. I'm just going to go next. The next certificate is a postgraduate certificate in pediatric acute care nursing. This is a 23-credit certificate, and it will allow someone who has a nursing degree in another field to actually sit for certification and become a certified pediatric acute care DNP. Students can take actually a whole track or come in and take just this certificate. It follows all the national standards, and it's one of the ways that we can ensure that our hospitals have nursing staff that are working with the right credential. The next certificate is a graduate certificate in healthcare ethics. It's part of an already existing MA in healthcare ethics, and it focuses on issues of social justice, the importance of race, gender, class, sexuality, religion, and culture on health and healthcare. And so the content of the certificate program will be similar. It is a 15 credit hour certificate, and it would increase the skill base of healthcare professionals. They have designed it so students in School of Medicine could complete it over a year. It will be online, hybrid, and some face-to-face. And the final certificate is an undergraduate certificate in ethics, and the proposed certificate offers undergraduate students rigorous training in ethics, built primarily from programming already offered in the philosophy department, and it requires 12 credits of coursework that can be completed in as little as 1 academic year. There you go.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any questions related to any of the 4 certificate programs that are being proposed? Hearing none, we will do the approval, each one of them individually, and we will start with the certificate in family business management and advising. May I have a motion to approve this program? There a second? Hearing that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion carries. Next, may I have a motion to approve the certificate in pediatric acute care nursing as presented? Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve this program. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next one is, may I have a motion to approve the undergraduate certificate in ethics as presented?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that this program be approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Finally, may I have a motion to approve the graduate certificate in healthcare ethics as presented? Move and second that this program be approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Thank you all for that. Next on our agenda is the report of the provost. Dr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours.
Thank you. 3 program closures that we have proposed today. The first is the Bachelor of Science in Atmospheric Science. The Department of Physics and Astronomy is proposing to suspend this 121 credit hour program. What they're really doing is disaggregating the degree program and moving it into 2 different programs. They will not cease offering the coursework in atmospheric sciences. In 2021, the study of atmospheric sciences will be available in the new atmospheric physics track in physics. And then students who want to have a specialized interest in meteorology will be able to do that in the Department of Geography and Geosciences meteorology track. Students will be able to complete the degree, the current degree, and we have approved a teach out program with our regional accreditor, SAC-COC. No faculty or staff are negatively impacted by the suspension. They're going to teach in the new atmospheric physics track in physics or in meteorology in the Department of Geography and Geosciences meteorology. And that new department we have up later for a renaming. 2 of the faculty will remain in physics and astronomy, and 1 will transfer to geography to manage the meteorology track. The next program closure is the Master of Education in Instructional Technology. That's is designed for rank 2 Kentucky certified teachers who would like to come and earn a master's degree or pursue rank 1 status and complete the endorsement for institutional computer technology. They're proposing closure of this program because of limited enrollment. Courses will be continued to be offered as part of the teach out, so we finish all students who are in there. And many of the courses will still be offered to students in the instructional computer for instructional computer endorsement, but it will be a part of the Master of Education in Teacher Leadership. So there's no additional cost to the students as a result to suspend this program, and no faculty or staff will be displaced. But I did want to check with the dean of the college, and in fact, they will end up hiring fewer term faculty because of this, because those faculty can assume teaching. No, that's not the one. So I need to say the faculty member who taught the majority of these courses has retired. So that's the next one. Then we also are proposing closure of the Masters of Education in Literacy. This is in the College of Education again. And it is an endorsement designed for certified teachers who plan to seek a master's degree. Again, because of low enrollments, they have decided to suspend this program. There's been a Teach Out program that's been approved by our regional accreditor, and many of the courses will be offered as the reading endorsement, but they're available through the Masters of Education in Teacher Leadership. There are no additional costs to students as a result to suspend it, and program faculty will continue teaching classes in other programs and will maintain a full course load. And it actually will result in fewer term faculty because they'll be able to pick up some of the courses that have been taught by the term faculty. Those are the three closures. Do you want me to just go on and do my whole, just keep going. All right. So the Department of Geography and Geosciences is proposing a name change to the Department of Geographic and Environmental Sciences. This name change is a reflection of their strong environmental science curricula that they have in the program, and they think it better reflects their teaching and research in these areas. They've had an environmental track for years, and a lot of graduates going into environmental sciences. In fact, their environmental analyst track is one of their most popular tracks in the major. Now they've added this meteorology track, which will further strengthen the environmental focus of that department, and there's been strong interest from students, and they believe the name change will actually help students find that department when they want something in environmental sciences. The next part of the report, I was going to talk to you about our accreditation of all our programs on campus. We will now be publishing this on the website. I asked Bob Goldstein, he's agreed to publish this so we have it not just in the disparate programs where it exists now in the catalog, but we will have one table that'll show all our accreditations of all our programs. As of today, all our programs currently hold accreditation or certification. They're all in good standing. Now, 2 programs have review dates that are beyond those that were originally scheduled, and that's Interior Design and Theater Arts. Those 2 programs were scheduled to be reviewed in 2021, but they were postponed due to COVID, and they'll occur in 2022. The School of Medicine had a recent site visit from their accrediting body, LCME, in April. They're waiting on the preliminary report, which is due by July 2020. But there were no significant issues mentioned at the time of the site visit. The School of Nursing also had a site visit in spring of 21 for the BSN, the MSN, and DNP programs. The school had submitted their responses to one finding. They addressed that issue. It was related to clinical supervision and the credential of the nursing faculty providing that supervision, and so we expect no issues with that as well. That's my report. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions for Dr. Gonzalez? I guess in December of 2019, law school had a visit from committee, and there was a report regarding, I don't know whether it was funding or something. There was an issue there. And I guess, have we addressed that? It's been addressed?
Let me just look at that just for a second. So School of Law is fully accredited. They were approved without recording requirements, and their next visit is scheduled in 2028.
Any other question, anybody? Thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the annual report of the Student Government Association President, Sabrina Collins. Sabrina.
Thank you. So I would rather just talk to you all than go through a presentation. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an update as to what the student government's been up to over the last year, which has been very unprecedented, as we all know, and everyone who was in SGA ran well prior to COVID, so they came into a very surprising and challenging term. But everything I'm going to talk about today would not have been possible if not for the amazing team and staff that SGA both were elected to our top 4, but also the staff that we selected. And each of you, I think, has, interfaced a little bit with my top 4 in this administration, but they have all been some of the most committed and passionate people about the university. And I genuinely believe would not be in the position that we're in now, having done so well throughout COVID, had it not been for how hard they worked over the summer and throughout our academic year to make that possible. So last year, those of you who were here, who were on the board, probably remember Jasper going through our SGA strategic plan. So we have a 2025 plan that we had done an audit of last year. And, in thinking about what I wanted to talk to you all about today, I considered, do we go through that and do another audit? But I don't think that really reflects the last year that we had, where we did have to make a necessary shift and focus due to COVID and due to the things happening in our community to really best serve students. So that's not to say we didn't make progress on our plan. We did. Those goals are always going to be in mind for us, but really, first and foremost, student safety and support during COVID was our highest priority, and that's not reflected in our plan. And so that's kind of why we're rolling with this today instead of walking you through an audit of that plan. So like I said, there was a necessary shift in focus due to COVID, but that's not all that we worked on. I think that, I don't want to beat a dead horse with what all we did with COVID, because I think most of you are probably somewhat aware of that. And here we are on the other side. I'd rather not dwell there, but I'd like to tell you about some of the other things that we've worked on that were maybe less at the forefront, less highlighted, and some things that you might be less aware of. With the Title IX changes that occurred, there was a lot of concern around student survivor advocacy and safety of students. We had staff who were strictly dedicated to that and came in, and that was their project of making sure that we were moving forward in a way that supported students as best we could under the guidelines. I'm really proud of that work. That was something that I campaigned on, and I think that we came out with a better Title IX policy because of it. We also have worked really hard on gender inclusive housing and making that the way forward for U of L. And as we've been pushing U of L to also hold true to our anti-racist agenda, we've been looking inward and making the necessary changes within SGA to really reflect those same values, which has not always been the case, very candidly. And so with that, we've instituted a diversity and inclusion committee, which is staffed, by both senators and non-senators, who are all students at U of L. We're able to compensate all of those members for the work that they're doing and the emotional labor that they've been putting forth to make our organization and our university better. And last summer, we were also really fortunate to have some great community leaders come in and lead some conversations with SGA in a virtual capacity. And I'm really proud of all of those things. And I know as I tell you more about the incoming president, that's not going to stop anytime soon. We were very intentional with our budget this year, figuring out how we could best support students. The Dean of Students Emergency Fund was almost consistently in need, and that's because our students were in need. So we were able to put our budget towards that. And in addition, the SGA Cares Hotline was an email that was established that students could reach out to us directly and they could get a response within days, usually within a day. And we had a staff, and I also mail forwarded to my personal email to make sure that students were getting the help they needed. They weren't just tossed around in the environment that, they didn't know who to ask and they could ask us, we could connect them. I'm really proud that that's going to be going forward. That's going to be a staple of SGA, and that'll continue to be a resource. And then lastly, with just accountability overall and safety of students, as we were talking about rave alerts and things like that, that was a big issue in this last year for our students. And it's really scary, when we can't all be face to face, and figuring out the best way to support our students through that. And so I am really proud of the things that we were able to accomplish over the last year. And like I said, our team has been fantastic in keeping those priorities front of mind. And so I guess now is when I'm supposed to give you a little introduction of the next president. But before I do that, I just want to mention that a member of our student body who has been both integral to SGA and our campus as a whole is currently missing. And if you've been paying attention to the news, you've probably heard his name, Quintez Brown, and he was last cited on Juneteenth. And so I just ask that you all use your capacities to share that information. If you look at U of L's Twitter page, we've shared that information as an institution. But I ask that you all do the same because it is important that we find him and bring him home. And I know him both personally and in a professional capacity. He's done a lot for this university. And aside from that, he's just a great person. And it really bothers me to have to sit here and say that he's still not been located. So now I guess I'll tell you a little bit more about Ugonna. She's really sorry that she couldn't be here today. She has a really cool internship that I'll tell you about in a second, which has prevented her from being with us. I know she wanted to be. But she's a senior from Louisville, Kentucky, and she's majoring in public health with a minor in healthcare management. She's a Woodford R. Porter Scholar and an Honor Scholar at U of L. And her internship, she's currently participating in University of Michigan's Summer Enrichment Program in Health Management and Policy. So she is really cool. I'm very lucky to call her my friend. And I know that she has great vision for where U of L needs to go. And she is a fearless advocate for students. I am really proud to hand this over to her. And I'm also really excited to say that she's the first woman of color to have held this position in quite a long time. And so with that, I won't say too much more because you'll get to meet her very soon. And I'm really excited, like I said, for you all to work with her. And the last thing I'll say is just thank you to everybody. I've really enjoyed working with you all over the last 4 years I've been in SGA, but most closely in the last 2. I've really appreciated all of your friendship, mentorship, and indulging me when I need to push back a little bit, but that as is my job. But I appreciate each and every one of you and the time I've had here. And so with that, that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you for that report. But more importantly, thank you for the outstanding service which you have provided to this university. I've been involved with big universities, small universities, research university, liberal arts institution. And when I look at what the University of Louisville Student Government Association does and get involved in, you're head and shoulders above many, many institutions. And you are to be commended for that. Man, it's all student led, which is really great for this institution. So I really appreciate that. We're going to look forward to your successor, but we wish you nothing but the best in terms of where you're going forward. And also, we know that you got a wedding coming up sometime.
Mm-hmm. One day.
Yes. Anybody would like to add any from the academic affairs, any comments or anything to Sabrina?
I'll just offer her our thanks for service. I didn't get to work with her long, but she was on the search committee, so I know she's smart because they chose me. So I did just want to thank her for that.
Okay, thank you for that, Sabrina. And again, we look forward to welcoming your successor, Ugonna, here at the July 15th Board of Trustees meeting. The next item on the agenda is, may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters pursuant to KRS 61F?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now in executive session. I ask only the following remain: the trustees, President Bendapudi, Executive Vice President Gonzalez and Durbin, Vice President Curry and Smith, Vice Provost Edel, and Assistant Secretary Beamer. For those of you who have been excused, we will alert you to when the open meeting reconvenes. personnel matters were discussed, and we should now take the following action, but I'll preface that by saying that Dr. Schultz is on the list for personnel action, and as a result of that, we'll be abstaining from voting and participating in that, and we want to make certain that that is recorded in the record. At this point, may I have a motion to approve the president's recommendations regarding personnel matters as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? The motion. Let's try it. We got that on there. Okay. I got them. I got to put them in reverse order. The next one is, may I have a motion to approve the president's recommendations regarding promotion and tenure?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay. The motion carries. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries and we are adjourned.
Not there yet.
Ms. Medley, you may
Yeah,
begin.
yeah, yeah,
Committee
keep
approved.
it.
All right, we're going to take a short break and then we will return with the Finance Committee.
Yes.
Hi. Smash.
Are we ready to go with the Finance Committee? All right, good afternoon. This is the meeting of the Finance Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Diane Medley here, Scott Brinkman,
Here.
Raymond Burse,
Here.
Sabrina Collins,
Here.
David Schultz.
Here.
All right, having determined a quorum to be present, I would like to call this meeting to order. The first item of business is the approval of minutes for the March 18, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion from a committee member to approve the minutes?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? All right, the motion carries and the minutes stand approved. All right, we're going to begin a pretty heavy agenda here, and we'll see how quickly we get through it, but there is a lot of important items here. So the first is the most important, probably, and that's the operating budget for 2021 to 2022. So Dan, would you brief the committees?
Yes, ma'am.
Hint.
I will do so. Before doing so, though, I would like to publicly acknowledge and recognize both the gentleman to my right, Rick Rosaric, who's the Associate Vice President for Budget and Planning, and his staff for the tireless work that they undertook to be able to get us to this point. It was quite an effort, and although the document is large, we apologize for the size of the document. We tried to strike a balance between transparency, comprehensiveness, and user friendliness, if you will. So, with that in mind, I will we'll let you know a couple things. Number one is the document that you have in front of you. The some of the numbers, most of the numbers, and all the assumptions are very, very consistent with what we spoke about a month ago in the budget workshop. The assumptions in terms of tuition increases, compensation improvement programs, and things like that are all identical. The document that you have in front of you expands the budget to look at individual unit budgets and also some individual expense and revenue component detail in terms of changes from last year or this year to next year. Again, so a lot of detail, and I will not go through each and every page, thankfully, but I would like to cover some high spots, and I'll refer to the page number to get there. And the first high spot, or the first highlight I'd like to highlight, is on page 203, which is a summary of the budget. It is a $1.335 billion budget. It's large, it's complex, but it's also simple in that it's broken into two pieces. If you remember the pie chart from the budget workshop from last month, the first piece is the general funds, represents the general funds, and those are the truly unrestricted dollars that we have to operate the university, consists 2/3 of tuition and fees, 1/3 of state appropriated dollars. The other piece of the budget's about $796 million, and those are the non-general fund budgets that are more restrictive in terms of responsibilities, in terms of what you can do with those dollars, and where those dollars come from and the amount. For example, grants or foundation and gift dollars. If you'll turn the page to page 204, there is a overview of the FY22 proposed budget. The left-hand column is the 21 general fund budget, but as you start to move to the right on the page, you'll see the shaded area of the general fund for 22, and you'll see the other non-general fund budgets broken out by the major funding group or the entity. Entity being the Research Foundation, athletics is EULA in this case. The gifts and endowments, those are the foundation dollars, the gift and endowment funds that flow into the university, and also just a group of internally designated departmental funds, for example, capital funds that are housed and expended and receive revenue into the university. So it's about a $1.335 billion budget. It relies on $1.3 billion worth, about $1.310 billion worth of recurring revenue or annual revenue coming in, and it uses about $26 million of carryover dollars from previous periods to fund some one-time expenses that are in the expense base. We separate one-time expenses, one-time revenues, and make sure that the recurring's covered, and with recurring dollars, the recurring expenses are covered with recurring dollars, and the one-time expenses are indeed funded only with one-time revenues. Now, on page 205, one of the questions that came up during the budget workshop last month was, how is this expenditure plan connected to our strategic plan? And it's a rather lengthy section, but we thought the importance warranted the length. And that is, we've given some examples of how some of the components of the budget are tied to the strategic plan: learn, work, and invest. And you'll see, for example, under learn, in addition to increased financial aid for students, increases in terms of the tools that we provide students, mainly laptops, and increases in academic unit budgets, in addition to a new housing project that will open this fall to enhance the student experience here on campus. We think that those are nice, solid connections, if you will, to the strategic plan and examples. This is not all inclusive, but these are some of the high-level examples. Those investments did not stop with students. On the next page, you'll see that we gave some examples in terms of support to the work environment, support in terms of compensation through reserving about $5.1 million worth of the budget to do a compensation program of some sort. We also reinstated the retirement contributions back to the pre-COVID rates, and we also held the health insurance premiums for the employees level from the prior year. So the employees will not experience an increase in health insurance costs, even though the health insurance costs did increase. Lastly, we wanted to draw the links between the budget and what we use to make the university a great place to invest in terms of systems, ranging from investments in a grant system, a pre and post award grant system to facilitate the grant application and award process, to facilities that those activities are housed in, and finally an investment in some people to help bring the investments into fruition. The other thing that we felt that the board would be interested in, and the committee would be interested in, is on page 211. And that is the overriding goals that we wanted to accomplish with the budget. And those goals are pretty simple. Number one, we wanted to make sure it was structurally balanced. Number two, we wanted to make sure it was flexible. If something goes wrong, we want to be able to deal with it quickly and with as less disruption as possible. We also wanted to connect the dots to the strategic plan, which we spoke about a moment ago. And last but certainly not least, we wanted to be mindful of external expectations in terms of what would our accrediting agencies be looking for and looking at from us in terms of a budget, and also what would Moody's and Standard & Poor's rating agencies be looking for. So we wanted to make sure that those were goals and embedded within the budget process. And we also wanted to make sure that our priorities were straight in terms of people, academics, lower cost, and just constant improvements. The other thing that we wanted to make sure that the board was aware of is the fact that we understand that things can go wrong. Not all plans work the way they're supposed to or they're designed to. And on page 212, we wanted to really focus on what's our plan, how do we mitigate risk with our budget? And we've identified several ways and several tools that we use to mitigate those risks, ranging from what I would consider a very, very aggressive planning process and a very aggressive monitoring process, all the way to being able to adjust academic and support unit budgets based on enrollment. So we're, again, the budget contains a lot of assumptions that we feel are very valid, very grounded, very well based, but we are still we still maintain a pretty aggressive risk management approach as we work through it. On page 213, you'll see the general fund budget, that first piece, the unrestricted piece of the operating budget, and the progression. And this is very similar to what we spoke about last month, in that in the first column is the 2021, the current year budget. The next column to the right is about $41 million worth of either new revenues coming into the university or reallocations of current budgets to be directed to that next column, which are the investments. And you'll see the 5.1 million under that center column, which is the compensation program, 1.5 million, which is the health insurance increase that we're funding centrally, and the number below that, the 14 million, that's a collection of several things, including increases to academic areas. based on enrollment volumes. On page 215, I wanted to focus on a couple of areas related to the budget, very critical areas. In the general fund, 2/3 of that general fund budget is funded from tuition, 1/3 from state appropriation, 1/3 from tuition. And we wanted to make sure that the committee and the board understood what the budget was predicated upon. And we're looking at about a $13.6 million increase in tuition revenues, consistent with the budget workshop data that we reported last month. About 5 million of that is from a tuition increase, and the rest is from increases in enrollment. Again, it's a $13.6 million difference between the current year budget and the expected budget for next year. Turning to page 217 to get to a little more granular level in terms of the the tuition increase that I mentioned a few moments ago. You'll see that the undergrad and grad levels are increasing by dollar amounts per semester. The undergrad's 104. It's a flat fee increase, resident, non-resident, and the graduate's 132. The professional schools are increasing by a percentage ranging from 2 to 3%. Now, these are the dollars and these are the budgets, but one of the things that we also wanted to update the committee and the board on was where are we at with enrollment in terms of our recruiting efforts. And Jim Bagani is here. And Jim, would you mind updating the committee on our enrollment status for the fall?
Not at all. Thank you, Dan. And Jake, if you could please just pull, I just have one slide here, a brief slide to update you on. And I will say, first of all, I'll be really glad as we move into our fall 22 application cycle, you know, we'll get back to normal. We're having our students come back to campus on the fall with our visit programs as we have pre-COVID. So it'll be nice to get back and have our students here on campus. So the first thing you see on there is when I was here on May 24th, our overall count was at 659. The FTE full-time equivalent was at 571. And I mentioned that, you know, we saw some similar things in the spring where we were down, in fact, 685 students, continued to improve, and in fact ended up with positive enrollment as we entered from fall into spring. So we are continuing to see a positive trend. Currently, we're at minus 413 students or 388 FTE down. This is an improvement over the May report of 246 on the count and 183 FTE. So in some ways, this is we're actually on a better trajectory we were in spring. Most of that improvement that we saw in the spring was actually in the last 6 weeks leading just after Thanksgiving, leading up to the start of the semester. And so, you know, there's certainly, we're working hard. We have a lot of work to do, but we are progressing in the right way in terms of what we need to do to get our students here back in the fall. Our freshman numbers continue to hold even. And so, you know, that's good to see. And then also retention, some slight improvement there, which you would expect since the improvement overall has increased, going from -8 to -7% at this point. So again, the brief update, as I mentioned when I was here in May, there are so many individuals across campus that are really combining their efforts and really working hard to get our students back in the fall and at the end to help them graduate, which is, you know, what we're about at the end of the day. So any questions? Just a quick update.
Thank you, Jim. If I could trouble you to turn to page 222, we've covered the tuition portion of the student fees for next year, but we also wanted to spend a few moments on the housing portion, the housing and dining plan portion. And as we reported and projected last month, we will not be increasing the housing fees or the dining fees for next year, nor the parking fees. So those will remain unchanged. That budget assumption has not changed since last month, and the budget is reflective of that. On page 224, just to bring a little sharper view of the investments that we're making in the general fund across the university next year. Again, the increases in academic unit allocations that are tied to enrollment increases, the compensation increase program, the annualizing of the ERP system, the computing system, and some advancement office bridge funding for 1 year, and also the covering the health insurance cost increase as opposed to passing it on to the employees. So again, the budget has about $20 million worth of investments in these areas next year. The other area that we wanted to highlight begins on page 231, and that's some supplemental information on the general funds by unit. This is a unit by unit view across the university of their general fund expenses for the last 2 years, their budget for this year, and the budget for next year, and all the changes. And again, there's a lot of information on some of these tabs, but we wanted they're provided in the sake of transparency to show the changes to the operating unit along with explanations of those changes. The next area that I'd point to is on page 259. And that is the non-general fund area. That's that $796 million collection of accounts in our budget. And those are the more restricted funds. The Research Foundation, about $600 million. That's primarily grants, federal grants, state grants, local grants, private grants, and also clinical dollars that flow into the healthcare enterprise, the Health Sciences Center. Athletics, EULA, $107 million. Then the gifts and grants, which flow from the foundation to the university. And again, the internally designated accounts, for example, capital accounts, continuing professional ed accounts, things like that. Just an array of departmental activities that are scattered across the university. These are, I will refer to them as self-balancing accounts, in that we require the recurring expenses to be supported by recurring revenues. In some cases, they do save money for a period of a few years, for example, for a faculty startup, to be able to deploy those dollars in future periods. And you'll see about $22 million of prior year fund balances, if you will, being applied to expenses in the upcoming year. Next page is some of the highlights of the increases or changes in those non-general fund balances or those non-general fund revenues and expenses. The COVID relief funds are reflected in those balances because most of them flow into the Research Foundation because they're federal relief, federal funds, increases in federal grants, and also some changes in both the hospital support, the clinical support, and also some student financial aid, some increases in Pell, for example. And again, these accounts are budgeted on an individual basis. This is about as close to a zero-based budget process as you can get, because they are budgeted on an individual basis and the expense budgets are tailored to the available revenue to be able to support them. So hopefully that was brief enough. I'd be, both myself and Rick would be glad to answer questions, but in closing, we're asking for approval of the operating budget for FY22, which would include the changes in student tuition rates, both the flat dollar increases and the percents in the professional schools, and also holding the other fees consistent, current, not increasing the housing and the dining and the parking fees. And also the full reinstatement of the retirement benefits from the post-COVID levels or to the post-COVID levels. You'll be asked to approve that a little later, but the budget does assume that that's approved. And also the other investments that we're asking that are included in the budget, for example, investments in the library and investments in the student financial aid, the deployment of the COVID relief dollars and those type of things that all factor into the $1.3 billion budget.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee or anyone else? Okay, could I get a motion in a second? Oh, I'm sorry.
I've got a comment and probably a couple questions. One, from the staff perspective, we're very grateful for all the work that went into providing a 1% raise, covering the what would have been an increase in health insurance premium, because for our lower paid staff, I think the health insurance piece has a greater net benefit to people than the pay raise itself. So we're very grateful for that and for the restoration of the retirement. I've got a question, Dan, on page 224. The compensation increase program.
Yes.
At 5.1, that is different than the 1% raise and things, right? Or
No, that's the 5.1 is reserving dollars for a compensation program. And the compensation program that we're thinking about right now kind of has two components to it, John. The first of which is a 1% base increase effective August the 1st.
Right.
The second is dependent upon how enrollment looks in the fall and achievement of those goals and budget objectives, and how spring looks. We have another 1% that we could deploy in the spring. So the 5.1 is 2%. It's 1% in the fall, and then the other 1% based on meeting the budget in terms of enrollment.
Okay, I thought that. I just wanted to make sure that that's what that was. And then the last thing was more of it concerns me that some ongoing costs, you and I have had discussions, you and I and Rick all three, that some of the ongoing costs are being passed on to departments in the form of the pay raise and things. And for departments, even if the budget stays the same, their amount of obligated money at the start of the year has increased. So their discretionary funds for student programming and things is in effect decreased. And I'm just, I'm cautious that sometimes for departments with small operating budgets, that may turn into unneeded personnel decisions. And B, I'm just wondering, I know we've got the ERP to pay for and things along that line. Why don't we put ongoing cost on ongoing revenue streams like the tuition increase, and put ERP or something like that on the contingency funds that are more one time? Because I know we've got 5 years or something to pay for the ERP, but at least looking somewhere down the road, we could say there's a chance that goes away.
The majority of the reallocated budgets are being used for the salary increase, with a little toward the ERP system. And the issue that you're speaking of, John, is it does impact support units very differently than academic units. Academic units, for example, have the ability to increase their budget through a budget model that we have. With increased enrollment comes increased budget. So there's some ability within the colleges to be able to absorb those. But on the support units, yes, as we start to reallocate budget within support units, we need to look at ways of enhancing those budgets somehow to be able to bring those up into the future. But for us, from our perspective, we needed to do something with staff compensation more immediately than
I understand. I agree, but I think you see where I'm coming from, because all the support staff, all the support units you just talked about are all the staff. So, thank you.
I also wanted to weigh in. I know earlier, Dan and I kind of talked, and I was like, I'm going to have to push a little bit. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. Students need to speak up about tuition increases. But before I do that, I do really want to say thank you to Rick and also Dan, because throughout this process, you both have been really receptive to student feedback and criticism, which is somewhat very much reflected in the fact that we're not increasing costs elsewhere. So I do really appreciate that. There were a couple of things I just wanted to note that, from the student side, I think are really important when we think about, are we actually going to increase tuition on students? And I think part of that is the fact that it's important to know that not a single student on the committee supported increasing tuition. The range, and that's not surprising, but I think it is important to reemphasize, is that, we put forth a range that included 0, and Rick remembers all the back and forth that made that happen. So, and like I said, I do appreciate that we're keeping other costs constant. It is important, though, that tuition is the biggest expense. And so those things do help, but this is also still, it's not a nominal thing for students when you compare it to $6,000+ for a semester. I mean, $100 a semester is still a lot. And I just wanted to note, we've talked a lot today about how we've come out of COVID in a much better position than most, and we've known this for a while. And there's a lot of reasons for this. It's the awesome faculty and staff that we have, and we've all made sacrifices to make that happen. The retirement contributions being pulled back, people were furloughed, salary cuts. But we also need to remember that students made huge sacrifices too, paying increased costs on almost every front in a year that no one would repeat. And so, our students stuck with us. That's shown by the fact that enrollment didn't decrease like others across the nation. And we can see, though, that really hurt students financially to be here because of, the demand for the Dean of Students Emergency Fund, which the board has supported, SGA has supported, our donors have supported. But I just think it's important to keep in front of mind that the impact on students isn't anecdotal. It's not hypothetical. And I know, again, I sent Rick the Pritchard Committee study, coping with COVID, and it was done on Kentucky students, so primarily the students who are thinking about U of L, or U of L might be top of mind. And of those students, 21% of respondents said they're much more concerned now than before the pandemic about paying tuition. And tuition's always been a concern, but that to me is really important. And that of those surveyed, 23% said they're moderately to very strongly considering attending a different college or university due to COVID impacts on finances. So all of those things just make top of mind for me, along with the fact that in February, I stood before students at the SGA debate and said I would not support or vote for a tuition increase. I think that makes it pretty clear where I have to go on this. But I just wanted to bring those things up because I think that when we have budget presentations, I always appreciate the transparency you all give. But from the student side, sometimes that's harder to see, or sometimes it becomes anecdotal. And so, it's been a long time since we've had a tuition freeze. And, it's not been since I've been at U of L. I hear about that as like a distant memory of like, oh, I remember that one time that we had a tuition freeze. And I'll just say, I think if there was a year to do it, it would be now. And you see that we're doing those values that we have of supporting students. You can see that across the other costs that we're keeping steady. But my point just being that, if there was time to do it, I think now would be the time, but we'll be saying the same thing again next year and the year after. And so, I appreciate you hearing me out. So I didn't mean to hit the microphone. But yeah, so that's all I've got.
If I may respond first, I absolutely positively respect your position, and I agree with you. And doing a tuition increase is, to me, the last resort. I mean, you try to reorganize, you try to save, you try to economize, and the last thing we want to do is pass costs on to the students and through a fee increase. But one thing that we are really proud of in this budget is at the bottom of page 228, the increase in aid that we will be dispersing to students from this year to next year is about $22 million, and that includes about $16 million worth of CARES money that we hope to get out, Jim, within the next few weeks before the bills drop.
Yep.
Yeah. So, although we may not be able to, we tried to keep the tuition increase as low as possible, but we also tried to put as much of our funding as we possibly could into aid to help the students offset that. So again, I absolutely positively respect and appreciate your opinion and your position. But from a student standpoint, I just wanted you to be aware of the fact that we are trying to put some more money in students' pocket and aids into their pocket to about $22 million. So
yeah, I got you.
Hopefully
I
that
appreciate
helps. And frankly, the more we can tell that story, the better, because everyone will benefit. All of our students will benefit from the CARES dollars. All of our continuing students.
Ask a question. Does the tuition increase request come from your office, or is there a committee on the Board of Trustees that looks at tuition separately, or is it just all part of an annual budget?
Rick co-chairs a committee. Would you like to talk a little bit about the committee and the process?
Sure. So the provost annually appoints a group of faculty, staff, deans, and students, and Sabrina was one of the representatives that was on this task force. And what they do is they actually make a recommendation to the provost, to administration, on all of the tuition rates for the upcoming year. Now, as you know, CPE also has the undergraduate resident policy, so all of the guidance that committee gives to the provost and leadership is with those limits in mind. And for next fiscal year, actually for the next 2 years, the CPE limited undergraduate resident tuition to 3% over 2 years, not to exceed 2% in any 1 year. So you can see that the rates that we proposed are actually below the cap that CPE set for the next year. But it's an advisory body that gives a recommendation to the provost.
So is our recommendation just a 1 year, the 1.75 basically?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
These are-
so you still have room to basically increase next year up to the 3%, correct? So that
Correct.
would be the 1.25.
It would be a maximum of about 1.1% or so, because it's the 3% is based upon our current rate, so it's
Okay.
not additive.
Thank you.
One other update that I was remiss in mentioning a few moments ago, and that is we always compare ourselves to UK in terms of tuition and total cost. Last month, when we looked at where we stood with our 1.75 compared to UK's current rate, we were less, about $155 less on a resident rate. UK raised their rates, so that delta will increase. That delta also increases more significantly when you package that with the total cost, with housing and dining and those type of costs. And University of Louisville is about $2,000 less than UK on a kind of a total cost basis. So we think that's also an important message to get out in addition to the $20 million in additional aid.
Anything else from anyone? I know that was a little out of order, getting questions before a motion and second, but I thought it was better if we can feel the support in the room first. So could I get a motion and second to approve the budget?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, so noted. All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Dan. That was a really good budget packet for you and Rick to prepare. So I want to tell you how much it was very easy for me to get through, and I did get through it. So that's always a good goal to have.
Let me make a comment in regards to, so for, in terms of, I did finally get through it all. Yeah, I want to say to Dan and to the staff, what you did is very much appreciated. Now I have more visibility to various buckets in terms of what's going on. And so, we've started down this road. Let's keep moving, but it is in fact a major improvement over the budget I saw in FY17. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And let's go on now to the approval to finance the research lab equipment at the Speed School. I think that's the next item.
Yes, ma'am. This is basically under Board of Trustees guidelines. We have to seek permission for long-term financing arrangements. And this is a 3-year financing plan, a lease purchase for a scientific core piece of equipment in the College of Engineering that helps support grant activity. We're borrowing about $560,000 on an established lease purchase arrangement, less than 2%. And we have identified and secured the funding sources, the annual funding sources, and verified them within the College of Engineering. So we would.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, could I get here? Let's see, I've got the all in favor. Any abstentions or nay votes? All right, that passes. Continuing, now we're going to go to an approval to amend the retirement plan.
Yes, ma'am. This simply allows us to reinstate the retirement contributions, the employee retirement contributions to the pre-COVID levels, 7.5% base contribution with the 2.5% optional. Right now it's at 6%, and this brings us back to the pre-COVID levels.
Move approval.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
One quick question, Dan. The amount that was the reduction for that period of time, I can't recall, has that already been made up, or is that going to be made up at some point, or is that just permanently?
It was used to balance the budget this year. It was one of the balancing components for the budget this year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? That carries. All right, moving on. Approval to renew the line of credit. This is the
Move
university.
approval.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor signify aye.
It's part of our
Any-
capital, our cash.
Any abstentions or opposition? That passes as well. They didn't want you to have the floor again, Dan.
No.
Next, the approval, this might get a little more discussion. Let's look at the intent for the project at Third and Cardinal.
I'll take that one. And
Okay.
I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Every time I sit in front of this group, I'm requesting approval for funding. This time I'm not.
Mhm.
So this should be an easy one. But we've been working on a project with a third-party investor that is interested in rehabbing and redoing the Third and Fourth and Cardinal block. That's where the old strip mall is. And this group, Providence Resource Group, is looking to bring a Target store here, a 3-story or a 3-star hotel, which is a Marriott property, a 3-star restaurant, and some retail down below, and some executive apartments above that. One of the major benefits for this project is bringing a grocery store component to the campus, and actually it supports not just the campus but the Old Louisville as well. And this is something that Old Louisville has been asking for us to partner with somebody over the last 3 or 4 years. And if we can get this thing to go through, it gives us an opportunity to bring that. So it also gives us an opportunity of expanding our education mission. The College of Business is entertaining and expanding one of their programs to help support this as well. And what this group is asking for is that the university shows their support in what they're doing. It is a non-financial binding arrangement. It is a affiliated type of partnership that basically says that we'll steer as many people as we can there, that we will partner with them on an educational program, and that we will bring some resources here that the university has not been able to bring forth to our students. One of the major benefits I see, though, is when we recruit students, we tell their parents that once you drop your son or daughter off here at the university, we're going to take care of them. And one of the best ways to do that is to keep them as close to campus as we can. We feel that if they're on the campus premises, we can ensure their safety as best as possible. This location is right in the middle of our academic or our residential housing footprint. It's an eyesore. It's an unsafe area that if we can get this thing done, it cleans that up, and it brings a resource, and it keeps our students here.
Was there some concern expressed about, I'm sort of thinking maybe it was a laundromat or something that's in that facility that
There's a laundromat there now.
people are like, there was people concerned about losing something
Yeah.
that's already there.
Yeah, so there's the C-store component there, which will be taken care of by having Target there. But the laundromat itself, a lot of our students use that. And the third party said if they can accommodate the cleaner or the laundromat in that footprint, they would look at that as well. But there is across the street in Cardinal, across the street in those strip mall over there, or not strip mall, but there's the resident hall that's over there as well. There are vacant spaces there too. So they said that they would work with the investment group there as well to help support finding a home for them as well.
So to clarify, I know we've had a conversation at one point about the business owners that are going to be displaced, because I believe that there's a couple of businesses there that are owned by people of color as well. That, you know, we are influencing the community that we might be able to help rehome some of those places or use our influence in the project to try to make sure they're not displaced. Is that something that's been discussed with them?
It's been discussed a little bit. They are still in their exploratory stage right now. So the goal is to, if there are retail vendors there that are critical to the needs of our students, they will consider trying to find space for them as well.
Gotcha.
It's a great project for us. What I like about it is we don't have to put any type of guarantees to it or financing.
Sounds like a win-win.
It is.
This is non-binding in that this just allows them to go to the next level of their due diligence.
Yep.
To form a plan.
So I need a motion, a second, to approve the non-binding letter of intent. John, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, next, approval of replacement video and scoreboards. This is an athletic association project at the lacrosse and field hockey fields. Dan, and I don't know if Vince is on.
This was,
Okay,
this was previously approved by the EULA board, and it's basically replacements, as you mentioned, of the scoreboards at the lacrosse and field hockey fields. The scoreboards are out of date. They're rapidly becoming obsolete, and athletics does have the funding to be able to cover these.
could I have a motion, a second, to approve this? All right. Can I get a second from the committee? All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? That motion carries. All right, approval of a contract to restructure debt and finance working capital. This is with the Athletic Association. I believe this is something that's been discussed at several meetings. But Dan, could you review briefly where we ended up on this?
Yes, this is, again, the EULA board approved this earlier. Athletics, because of the interruptions in the occupancy limit or the occupancy limits at athletic venues this fall and spring, they experienced about a $50 million revenue decrease. They were able to meet some of that through expense decreases, but they needed bridge funding to get through the rest of the year. And rather than float that, if you will, with university funds, we wanted to keep the athletic cash situation a little different than the university cash situation. In other words, not decrease the university's cash position because of this. So athletics sought external financing to do two things. The first of which was $20 million for working capital. Just basically pay bills and get them through the rest of this year until the business picks up in the fall, which it already has. That's a $20 million piece. They will use about $14 million of that to get through the year ultimately. And there's about an $11 million refinancing of existing debt component to this. So in total, it's a $31 million borrowing package. And athletics does have that built. The EULA column that we looked at a few moments ago in the approved budget, the provisions for those for the repayment of this debt is absolutely in that column.
Any comments on this one? All right, can I get a motion, a second, to approve this? Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Okay, that passes. All right, that was much better than I anticipated. So we're at the end of the meeting, unless someone has some other financial matter they want to bring up. Hopefully not. So can I get a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Everybody in favor? All right. All right. Executive Committee.
Yeah, okay. Do any of the trustees have a hard stop at 4? I don't think we'll go much past that, but I just want to make sure we.
If you have a hard stop
leave the
at 4,
agenda
hard stop at 4.
at the order that it is. I know Jim had to step out for a call. So good afternoon and welcome to the meeting of the Executive and Compensation Committee of the Board of Trustees. I will now call the roll. Mary Nixon, I'm here. Raymond Burrs.
Here.
Diane Medley. Here. Scott Brinkman.
Here.
Jim Rogers is not back. John Smith. Having determined a quorum present, I call this meeting to order. First item of business is the approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion from a committee member?
Minutes.
It's not in my script.
Are the minutes in the consent?
No, they're separate. So I move approval of minutes of the December 10, 2020 Executive Committee meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, revisions, corrections? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, Raymond.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any
Second.
discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries.
I move approval of the 2021-2022 operating budget.
Second.
Okay. Yeah, this is per the board bylaws, section 2.8, approval of the annual operating budget requires a roll call vote. Although this is a meeting of the executive committee, I request that all trustees present vote on this recommendation. We have a motion and a second on the floor. I will now call the roll. Scott Brinkman.
Aye.
Raymond Burse.
Aye.
John Chilton.
Aye.
Sabrina Collins.
Nay.
Al Cornish.
Aye.
Diane Medley.
Aye.
Mary Nixon. Aye. Diane Porter.
Aye.
Jim Rogers, not present. David Schultz.
Aye.
John Smith.
Aye.
Cheryl Zimmerman.
Aye.
Ayes have it and the motion carries. Our next item of business is approval of the promotion and tenure recommendations from the Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Raymond, would you like to present them?
Yes, I would. And I take great pride and pleasure in presenting this. As written in Kentucky Revised Statute 164.830, the Board of Trustees of the University of Louisville is granted the power to appoint all faculty members, and per the board's bylaws, the Academic and Student Affairs Committee considers all recommendations for promotion and the awarding of tenure. This is one of our most critical functions of this board, the promotion of the faculty who are educating the future leaders of Louisville, the Commonwealth, the nation, and the world. And so it is with great pleasure that I move approval of this recommendation.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries. And
Let me,
yes,
I failed to say that when I'm putting that forward, is that on the list for the actions is David Schultz, who is being promoted. And for the record, he is abstaining from voting and did not participate in any of the discussion regarding that motion.
thank you, Raymond, for that clarification. And we now have the report of the president. Neely, are you ready?
I am.
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've had a thorough review of what has happened from our HR and from our finance, and hopefully the materials we submitted to you will try to explain what we were doing in terms of our strategic planning as well. So I would like to talk to you about the team and how well they've done. I know you know this, but just in the past year, on top of everything else happening, I'm very proud that Mary Elizabeth Miles was recognized for her excellence in HR. Tom Miller received recognition for his leadership in the healthcare arena. Faye Jones was recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award for her contributions in healthcare. And Michael Wade Smith was recognized as 40 under 40. The two new ones that I'm happy to celebrate with you are Tony Ganzel, who was recognized as the most admired woman in education. And finally, just today, our own Dan Durbin received recognition for excellence in finance. And so I'm just really proud of the team for all of these heroic efforts at a time that's really been challenging. I'd also like to thank shared governance leaders. All three of them, actually from the time I've been here, every single person in that role has shown genuine dedication to the university and a willingness to work openly. And I'm very grateful. Of course, wish Sabrina the best and really eager to work with Ugana as well. And I'm delighted that I'm fortunate enough that David and John will continue to be partners in this journey for the coming year. Maybe a couple of other quick highlights or concerns in my mind. You know that in fall 2020, we had record enrollment and record graduation. And that was bucking the trend clearly, both nationally and in Kentucky. But as I look ahead, I get concerned about what's going to happen, mainly because of the mental health toll this has taken on our students. And so that'll continue to be a focus. Jim Begani and team, thank you. And for our faculty and staff, I'd like to say thank you, because we know this cannot be just an admissions team. The number of our faculty and staff who've worked with Jim and his team to say, we'll make calls, we'll do emails, because we are concerned that if students stop out, they actually hurt their chances for career development. Very proud of our Employee Success Center that we've created. And at some point, we'd love to have Brian Buford come here and present to you the programs and the participation, just to give you an idea. And again, kudos to Mary Elizabeth Miles, because she recognized early on we needed this. And without bartering for something in return, transferred these individuals to the president's office as a priority in the strategic plan. And so they have learning circles around things like coming back. If you've been working remotely, what are the challenges to coming back? If you're a new parent, all the employee resource groups, they've started an Asian American and Pacific Islander ERG here. So that's been very, very good. In terms of our investments in the community, all of you know the big role that the university played in vaccinations. We're very proud of that. Every church, every school, community center, anyone that reached out to us, again, Jason Smith and team have done an amazing job. Proud that we are launching the urgent care in West End, as well as Bullitt County. So trying to really identify areas that have need and how do we meet with them. I would like to point out a couple of things that you might have already seen, but at the Peace Hospital, we realized that there was a huge need for geriatric care for dementia. And I'd never really thought about this. They specialize in mental health for adolescents, as you know, young adults. This has become a big issue in Kentucky with addiction and with Alzheimer's, and there's no other place in the county that's admitting them now. So recently we opened a 20-bed unit in Fraser Hospital so that people don't have to leave the county and can get the care they need. Finally, on the research side, we continue to make incredible strides. Very, very proud of our hepatobiology and toxicology unit. COBRA stands for Centers of Biomedical Research Excellence. It's an NIH program for states that don't traditionally get a lot of funding. It's usually the coasts that get this. And Dr. Craig McLean shared a fact that actually I did not realize. There are over 100 COBRAs that are supported across the country. There's only one that focuses exclusively on liver, and that's here. And so we got funded for the first 5 years, and then because of the performance got renewed for a second 5 years. So phase 2, it's $11.3 million grant. And again, all these are clearly tied to the needs of this community. Apparently, while all other cancers are going down, liver cancers, cirrhosis-related deaths, as well as non-alcoholic fatty disease are very much on the rise and rising the most in Kentucky. So this is something that is we are looked to across the country as a repository of knowledge about this and where we would go. we have continued our partnerships and very proud of some of these. And Madam Chair, you're aware of a couple of these, but I want to say there's more coming. Jasmine and I have been working very, very closely. And with COVID-19, some of the partnerships we've been pursuing have all taken a little longer to come to fruition, as everybody said, we need to focus on how things are going. So I'd like to thank you for connecting with us with Yum Brands and Raymond Burse. I did not forget. Yeah. So Raymond and you and having those initial conversations, and Kathy Gossard, I really want to call her out for her excellence in this. We have received a $3.5 million grant for creating the Center in Global Franchise Excellence. This is going to be a tremendous opportunity for the university. Clearly, partnership with the #1 franchisor and the opportunity to bring more attention to the good things happening here. We've received $1 million for the School of Nursing renovation, Commonwealth Credit Union. Again, we truly are looking at how the anti-racism agenda means we've got to address academic preparedness, we've got to address cost, we've got to address belonging. So given food insecurity, very, very grateful to their $1 million commitment for expanding the Cardinal Cupboard. Corsair is back, gave us $1 million over the last year to bring their lifetime giving to UFL to over $50 million. I could go on and on. We have most recently $500,000 for the Yarmouth Reading Room in the library. As many of you know, Chairman Yarmouth co-teaches a class here with Jasmine Ferrier, and it is something that the students greatly enjoy, and so we're glad for the recognition and where we continue to work. So if you ask me what the big challenges are, enrollment, retention, making sure that our faculty and staff are recognized for the good work that they are doing, and mental health continues to be a priority for us. And Madam Chair, that concludes my report. Happy to answer any other questions.
Yes, anybody have any questions for Neely?
Are we dealing with any shortage of staff because of voluntary staffing?
Mark can tell you that he does in operations as our COO.
I'm not asking for money though. Yeah, so physical plant for us from a staffer is the largest staff we outside of academic side, but we're down about 40% in staffing. Then the
that's a lot.
Campus police is down about 30% as well. And so when you're at that less than $14 an hour range, and you still got the stimulus money out there and unemployment, it is really hard to get people to work. And it's not just us, the restaurants in the area, I mean, all the firms are really struggling to find people. At some point, when things change and the unemployment is still there, but at least it's going to force folks back into the workforce. It will get better, but we're hoping sooner than later. But right now we're putting plans in place to really try to figure out how we best manage a large return to campus population with a shortage of staff.
I would like to add something on some of these. Cheryl, as you know, I'm starting my senior year at UFL. So I would say year one was all about accreditation and the huge financial hits. Dan and I had to take a blunt instrument of 5% cut and do whatever we could. The second year was all consumed with saving the hospital system. Year three, to me, was all COVID-19 and the desperate cries for racial equity. I think this year, well, of course, I will jinx myself with this, but really the hope is we take a good, hard look. Slowly, there's no question we're in a better financial position today than we used to be. We're still not where our peers are or what we need to do. Some of these shortages have been chronic. Some have been exacerbated by what's going on. So we will take a firm look at it and say, do we need to increase what we pay? How do we make it more attractive? We have some of the most generous benefits you could find in the city. But how do we communicate those? Are those the right benefits? What is the appeal of those? So we'll continue to try to be an employer of choice, but it is a challenge.
Okay. Any other questions for Neely? That was an interesting recap of your freshman, sophomore, and junior.
That's how I remember those anyway, as over the the big challenges we faced.
Yeah, and there have been some big ones, but I feel good as chair of the board about the trustees that we have around the table and how seriously they take their jobs. And you can tell from the questions that Dan gets, I get, chairs get, that people plow through their 300 plus pages of advanced material and take their job seriously. So I'm very grateful for that and for the team you've assembled. And there are all kinds of challenges out there. And I call it the hangover from COVID. We're not past it yet.
Right.
There's still we're starting to feel like we're coming back to normal, but there's a lot of things with students and bringing people back to campus that are going to be challenges. But I feel like we've got the right people, the right attitude, the right passion in terms of how we go about doing that. We'll do the best that anybody else could possibly imagine. So thank you. No action is needed on what's been presented today. We look forward to approving your senior year goals at the July meeting. Next is the report of the chair. I just want to update people on the presidential evaluation process, which you've all been involved in. What you should have all have Neely's self-evaluation. You received the evaluation that you are asked to complete, and I believe, Jake, we have all of those in now. Okay, believe we do. I hope we do. Those results are being tabulated by the committee that administers that process, will be sent to myself and Scott Brinkman, and then we will formally evaluate Dr. Bendapudi at the July 15th meeting. So following this meeting, I'll schedule opportunities to catch up with you all and make sure you have a chance to give me any additional feedback. I know those forms are, they don't always give you the opportunity to say everything you might want to say. So we'll get that process in place. So don't be surprised when you get an email from me asking for some time. Additionally, we have finalized the board meeting dates for next year, and Jake, you're going to send those out to everybody after the meeting. I hope those work for you. If we have problems with them, we'll adjust. And then it's time to talk a little bit more about Sabrina, because this is Sabrina's last meeting with us. And, I think we all know that she's been a faithful, energetic, passionate, committed leader. I don't know how, given, being a full-time student, and the SGA job is always a lot of work, but during the pandemic, it was extra work. And I commend you for pulling all that off and doing it with poise and a smile and a positive attitude. And I know from conversations you and I've had, from the way you conduct yourself in these meetings, that you're a real advocate for the students. And I know they are grateful, and we are grateful to have your voice in here. Sabrina, I think, mentioned at the last meeting that she was kind of taking a gap year before furthering her education, but her gap year, she's accepted a new position with Kellner Green, a law firm here in town. So working, and congratulations on your new position. And I know you will do extraordinarily well. And if anybody has any other comments before Sabrina, you've already made some comments, but if there's anything else you want to say, I think I covered it. Okay. Well, it's been a real pleasure, and we shall take great pleasure in watching the next chapters of your life unfold. And we're very, very grateful for your service and very, very proud of you. Okay, so We now need a motion to recess to executive session to discuss proposed or pending litigation pursuant to KRS 61.8101C. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now in executive session. I ask only the following to remain. Where is that list? President Bendapudi, Provost Gonzalez, Vice Presidents Curry and Smith, Assistant Secretary Beamer. For those of you being excused, we will alert you when the open meeting reconvenes. Okay, we're back in open session. During the executive session, the board discussed proposed or pending litigation. No actions will be taken. I did fail to mention that in recognition of Sabrina's service, we had previously presented her with a gift, so she does have that. Didn't want anybody to think we'd forgotten that. Having no other business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Oh.
Can I congratulate?